Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Peter K here, your finance PT, and today I'll be talking you through the zero-based budgeting method. Now, this is a great method to allow you to know exactly where your money is going each month and to allow you to plan ahead of your purchases and allocate every single penny of your income to a specific purpose. And I personally love the zero-based budgeting method. It's what I use on a monthly basis, and it really helps me to plan ahead in advance and to know exactly what I'm going to do with every single penny and pound of our income. So let's get straight into the first steps. Now, the whole concept of the zero-based budgeting method is that you allocate all of your income to a specific purpose. So once you've done all of your numbers, you should get a total of zero, because essentially you are going to be minusing your income from all of your expenses. So your fixed expenses and your flexible expenses, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And if you've watched any of my budgeting videos before, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's get into the first step. So in terms of how you get started, the first thing you need to do is, of course, know how much is your income. How much are you expecting within a month? Now, if you get paid on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, I definitely suggest writing down how much you should be getting for the total of that month. And then the next thing you need to be looking at is how much are your fixed expenses. So these would be expenses such as your rent, your mortgage, your utility bills, insurance, any debt repayments you may have, or credit card repayments you may have, any fixed expenses that you have a standing order or direct debit that you pay. So this would also include your subscriptions as well, such as Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, and whatever other subscriptions you have. So what you'll then do is minus that from your income. So let's use an example. If your income was £2,000 and your fixed expenses was £1,000, of course you'd have £1,000 left over. Now, there's two ways you can do the next step, but we'll do it the way that I'll show you in this video, and you can then decide what works best for you. So what you're going to do next essentially is decide from that leftover amount, how much do you want to save? Now, this can be a little bit tricky because it's like, okay, you might say, I want to save £800, but you need to be thinking whether that £200 is a realistic amount for you to have left over to spend on your flexible expenses. So your flexible expenses are going to be things like your groceries, personal care items, household items you may need, such as cleaning products or any other little bits you need for your house. Also things like miscellaneous budget, because you know there's always going to be things that pop up that you may not necessarily have budgeted for and which you want to be able to cover. Also things like gifts and giving as well, that may be something you want to budget for, and travel. So definitely you need to make sure that the saving amount is going to be realistic. So if you say, okay, let me save 800, you have to then think, is £200 a realistic amount for your flexible expenses? Because the whole purpose is for you to set a realistic amount that you're not going to need to dip into your savings to take money out of it. So definitely factor that in and keep that in mind as you decide your saving amount. So let's say you decided that you're going to save £500 and leave £500 for your flexible expenses. What you would then do next is going through all of your flexible expenses, and you're going to allocate a specific amount to each of those things for that month. So you're going to allocate a specific amount for your groceries, for your home supplies, for your personal care, all the items that I've said previously. But I want you to also think about maybe some specific categories to you. So maybe something that you like is eating out. I would definitely say factor in things that you do enjoy, but of course at an affordable rate. And don't forget to include your treat me budget. That is going to be a budget that you allocate a specific amount that you can use to treat yourself to whatever it is you like or whatever it is you enjoy. But of course you have to use an affordable amount. You're not going to use all of your flexible expenses, because then you're going to leave other important things unattended to. So definitely remember that. So now let's recap a little bit. So remember, you've minused your fixed expenses, you've now allocated how much you want to your savings, which is at £500, and you've now allocated another £500 to your flexible expenses. So that would total zero. So that would mean you've allocated every single penny and pound to what you want to be spending your income on. But here are a few pointers that I want you to bear in mind. So first thing is, if you find that the money left over is not enough, so let's say, for example, you factored in all of your flexible expenses and you found you're now in minus. So what you then do is look at your fixed expenses and see if there's anything that you can go through, maybe subscriptions that you're not using that you could cancel, or perhaps any packages that you can change and alter the prices to, so that it's going to be more affordable. Because the idea of the zero-based budgeting method is that you should get zero. So if you're getting minus, that means that you're definitely living above your means and that you need to kind of do some jigging around. So have a look first and foremost at those fixed expenses and see if there's anything that you can alter. If there's a case of everything's essential, there's nothing you can cancel, there's not a case that you've got a gym subscription that you're not actually going to the gym, then you're going to leave those things. And then what you're going to look at next is maybe altering your savings amount. One thing I find sometimes is that we are overly ambitious with what we want to save, and what we want to save versus what we can afford to save is not always the same thing. So then have a look at maybe dropping that savings amount a little bit down so it's a little bit more realistic. So maybe in this case, £300, and then you then have that extra 200 to cover those fixed flexible expenses, and then essentially you should get to zero. So once you've gotten to zero, your budgeting method for the month is done. You have created your zero-based budget, but then of course it's all a case of tracking your spending. There's no point of creating this wonderful budget if you don't actually track and keep, in control of how you're spending. You've done the hard work in planning it out, but of course you need to make sure that you're tracking what you're spending. So I definitely recommend tracking your spending weekly. So you can either download a budgeting app, write it down. Some people like to keep track of it by writing it down in a notebook, or what I'd recommend is grabbing a copy of my finance and budgeting tracker. It's £2.50, and honestly, it's the best £2.50 you'll ever spend. This is something that I personally use, and I always encourage my clients to do the same, and I've had lots of positive reviews from them doing so. It's really going to allow you to keep track of what you're spending and really allow you to see patterns in your spending as well. You may find that you're spending a lot of money on, let's say, coffee, or you may find that you're spending a lot of money on takeaways, eating out, makeup, games, whatever it is you like doing. So it's really important to make sure that you're tracking what you're spending so that you can actually stay within your budgets. And one of the great things with the zero-based budgeting method is if you find that you've allocated a specific amount for a category, maybe you put a bit too much. So let's say you allocated £50 to house supplies, but you only needed to spend about 20. You can then reallocate that extra funds to another category that you do need to spend a bit more in. So it gives you that flexibility in that sense. And that's what I always do. I play around with my numbers because I always find that groceries is something that some way, somehow, we always seem to spend more on groceries than I'd like to. So definitely play around with your numbers in that sense. So I hope you guys found that useful. I'm just going to check a little bit through my notes just to make sure there's nothing I've missed. But I think one of the key things with the zero-based budgeting method is making sure it's realistic and also factoring those key things. What are those flexible expenses, and also looking at every single month individually. So checking your calendar. Are there any birthdays coming up? Are there any events coming up? Now that the world is opening back up, I'm sure there's going to be lots of outings happening, maybe work functions. So do make sure when you're setting your budget, you are thinking about those things so that you can factor them into your budget. Because the worst thing you can do is set this budget and it seems all lovely, but then you forget you've got a dentist appointment that you didn't factor in the money for. You've got maybe some other kind of appointment that you have to pay for. So definitely think of each month individually and make sure you're actually tracking your spending. And this is going to allow you to stay within your budget and stay on track. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. Do let me know in the comments if you did. If you use the zero-based budgeting method like myself, also let me know, because honestly, I absolutely love this method, and it also allows me to track and see patterns in our spending and look at ways that me and my husband can spend better. What I'll be doing in my next video is a video on a percentage-based budgeting method. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you did like today's video, do give it a like. Do subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed, and I will see you guys in my next video.